Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Dbacks Dispatch. You got the trio here, Brandon, Brett, and Gabe, here for another fun episode. This is your first time on the channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future content. We did go live here just a couple of days ago talking the Jock Peterson signing, so make sure to go ahead and check that out. We will be talking the 2024 Hall of Fame class here today. Gabe, I want to get your thoughts first. What do you think?
You want to know my thoughts? Hit it, Josh. Ladies and gentlemen, the state of Hall of Fame voting is not good. We live in a world where the greatest baseball player of all time isn't in the Hall of Fame. Now you may say, Gabe, they don't allow cheaters in the Hall of Fame. Well, let me introduce you to one of the most beloved icons, Mr. Gaylord Perry. Baseball charted him out for years as one of baseball's most beloved icons. But, because he won 314 games, but he used a pitch that was made illegal in 1921. So now you're thinking, well, maybe he played before, right? In the 1900s or something, because they don't allow known cheaters into the hall. Well, that pitch was he was pitching with that pitch well into the 1980s. And that pitch was a spitball, which is damn near impossible to hit, which is why it was made illegal. He even wrote about using this pitch in his autobiography, Me and the Spitter, which came out in 1974, which is about 9 years before he even retired. He didn't even get ejected for using a spitball until 1982, and for his shameless cheating, he was awarded a plaque in Cooperstown in 1991. Another more recent cheating scandal, the Astros. What punishment did they face when they were found out to have won the World Series by cheating? Well, they kept all their World Series, their rings, and their millions of dollars. And mark my words, in 10 years from now, Jose Altuve, Carlos Beltran, and Justin Verlander will be giving speeches in Cooperstown despite benefiting from the cheating. As for all the other records, such as the home run record made by Babe Ruth, I'd honestly argue that there should be an asterisk in front of him and everyone else, just like they want to add an asterisk to Barry Bonds, because in an era where Babe Ruth was competing against chimney sweeps with three fingers, Babe Ruth, uh, Babe Ruth dominated the league. But that's not why he deserves the asterisk. He deserves one because he didn't have to compete against black people. And I know it may sound like a joke, but imagine a league where the entire half of this country was not being able to compete. The last two MVPs wouldn't have been able to play in Babe Ruth's time in baseball because of the color of their skin. And if we look at the everyday D-backs lineup, only Christian Walker and Jock Peterson would be allowed to play. So if we want to argue about asterisks in baseball, we have to start there. So now the lie that we've been told our whole lives is that steroids help you hit dingers. That's not true. They only help with recovery at an unnatural pace. The most important part of hitting in baseball is hand-eye coordination, which doesn't help with it at all. But there is a position that steroids do impact a lot, and that's pitching. A large majority of players that have been popped for steroids in 2005 have been pitchers. If you ever pitched in a game before, you know that your right arm, left arm, whichever one you pitch with, it's dead, it's on fire, it hurts. But obviously, with steroids, it helps you recover a lot faster, so you're able to go out and pitch again. And the poster boy for pitchers who used steroids was Roger Clemens, who was never actually caught with steroids in his whole career. Over and over again, we've had players admit to using steroids and they also admitted well over 75% of the league was on it. So why punish Barry? Because he was better than everyone? Do serious believe that steroids didn't enter baseball until the late 1980s, when the San Diego Superchargers are famous for taking them in the 1960s? I know people will say that steroids were banned in baseball in 1991, but they never did testing for them until 2005. So what? You're telling me that no one ever used them ever because baseball is such a pure sport? But also in 1991, when they're actually banned, the commissioner at the time, Faye Vincent, actually had to step down because of the backlash from the Players Association. And then he was replaced by Bud Selig, who's also in the Hall of Fame despite being the one who was in charge during the whole steroid era. But the problem with MLB what they have against Barry Bond isn't just that he was just an asshole to reporters and staff and fans. It's that baseball had another PED problem that they try to sweep under the rug for the last few decades. I'm talking about amphetamines that were lovingly referred to by the players as greenies. Jim Bouton's book Ball 4, which came out in 1970, details his experience with greenies in the clubhouse all over the major leagues, which talks about the clubhouse that had leaded and unleaded coffee pots, which had amphetamines in them and without them. During the Pittsburgh drug trials, outfielder John Milner even testified that everyone grandparents' favorite player, Willie Mays, introduced him to liquid meth or amphetamines, which he called red juice. Tony Gwynn spoke about it. Matt Holliday told a Denver Post in 2005 after testing started that players might want to start thinking about getting a proper diet and exercise now that they couldn't use stimulants. But why would these players use these drugs over the course of baseball history? Well, if you break down what goes into the season, 162 games, the traveling, night games, day games, there's so much that goes into being a major leaguer that they needed something that could keep them awake after playing a late night game. If you're listening to this, thinking, I could never do that. These guys made a choice to take these drugs. Well, what if tomorrow your job told you that they start banning caffeine of any sort and everyone caught with it would be fired? Would you stop drinking coffee, Red Bull, soda? Probably not, especially if they don't test. So you're telling me that these guys who are making millions of dollars weren't using these in order to perform their job? A lot of what you hear from former players is that they felt that if they didn't use amphetamines, that they were hurting the team to the point where pitchers would say that they didn't want to face someone naked. Naked meaning somebody who was playing clean. Now, for some stats for some naysayers, in 2005, when testing started, you would think that the home runs drastically fell in 2006, right? If they were banning steroids. No, they actually went up. In 2005, the league hit an average of 167 home runs, and in 2006, they hit 179. But to go back to an earlier point, the large percentage of steroid users were pitchers. So it makes sense to me that the guys who are benefiting most from the steroids were the first to feel the absence of them. Since 2006, when amphetamines started to get tested, suddenly the strikeout rates went up. Why? Because you have guys getting a lot more tired and just not as focused as they were in previous years. Even if you look at the perfect games, between 1880 and 2004, there were 17 perfect games. Since testing started in 2006, there have been seven, almost double what they had in 20 years than they did in over almost 130 years. So what's happening? Well, guys are just more tired and they can't take a pill to wake up and stay focused during the games anymore the way they had in previous years. If you watch the games now, there's guys pounding Red Bulls in the dugouts because they're just tired. They're exhausted from a season like this. So I truly believe, in my heart of heart, that the reason why Barry Bonds is in the Hall of Fame is because Bud Selig and Major League Baseball needed to sweep away a major scandal that would tarnish every single record ever made. An asterisk after every accomplishment of the last 80 years, including the Wade Boggs 70 something beer cross country flight record, which, by the way, you know what players used to use to bring them down from the amphetamines? Beer. So, yeah, who better take the fall than a man that was already hated by the league and by the writers? So, to the voters, Major League Baseball, and the fans, put Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame. Thank you.
I did
Yeah.
not realize the can of worms I just opened up by asking Gabe's current thoughts on the Hall of Fame. He's not wrong, y'all. Like, he is not wrong with anything that he said. Greenies was a huge thing. But it was amphetamines, and they they didn't want to talk about it, and then they tried to sweep it under the rug. Um,
Yeah.
Baseball benefited from the steroid use. They
Yeah,
had
and
just come.
also like the just by the way, for anybody interested, there's an article on ESPN about it from 2006 or 2005, like right after they stopped uh once they started testing it. So there's like a first-hand account of players talking about what they're going to do now that they're not going to be able to test or use steroids and be tested for it. So it's not just me saying it; it's an actual ESPN article. You can find it at Bleacher Report everywhere.
Yeah, Yeah, like this is not something that Gabe came up with on his own. This is a very common theory for a lot of people as to why Barry Bonds is not in the Hall of Fame. As we see on our graphic here, in 2004, his on base percentage, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, without a bat, which basically means he'd walk or get hit, would be 608. You ask any manager or player, do you want a 608 on base percentage? Sign me up without a doubt. So hopefully Bonds does end up getting in, but he can only get in by the committee. So let's hopefully eventually they get there. So, Brett, what are your thoughts on what Gabe kind of stated there with Bonds and the Hall of
I
Fame?
mean, Gabe was spitting nothing but facts. Like, agreed with everything in there. Like, the Hall of Fame has always been like so subjective with its voting, and like just the fact that they're basically blackballing Barry Bonds out of it. And hey, I was growing up, was an avid like, oh, Barry Bonds did steroids, he's a cheater, and like once I got older, I realized I'm like kind of like Gabe said, like, yeah, it helps you, get more repetitions, and like theoretically you could get a little stronger and stay like
Yeah.
healthier throughout the season, but like that's all it's doing. It's not like MLB The Show where you're adding like 300 points to your power versus righty and lefty, and you're playing on rookie mode at Coors Field, hitting 5 home runs a game. It's not just a one and done situation. Like, so I think the Hall of Fame has always been just kind of like it's always great to see people get voted in the Hall of Fame. It's always a big deal, but just the way the voting process and like how the voters do it is just always so confusing. Like the fact that Billy Wagner is going to have to use his 10th and final year to get in, which he should. He finished just 5 votes shy, but the greatest lefty reliever in history with 270 something plus saves, like a sub 3 career ERA, should be in the Hall of Fame already. The fact that it's going to take his 10th year is insane. Mariano Rivera being the only player to be voted in unanimously when Ken Griffey Jr. And Randy Johnson and other guys like that didn't get voted unanimously. Like it's things like that where I'm like how are you going to be hypocritical about one thing and then vote for like I'm never voting for one guy that played in the steroid era, but then like vote for guys that played in the steroid era. But because like Gabe said, oh, the guy was mean to the media, or the guy had like more spotlight on him, and so they don't want to give him the flowers they deserve. Like Todd Helton taking 6 years, kind of crazy. Like I think he should have been in there a little sooner. Like it never makes any sense for when they want to vote on a guy to get in, and when they decide like that's why I've always been confused. Like that's why they let guys, you have to wait 5 years after you retire before you can even be on the ballot. Like once you're on the ballot, what's the difference between, like, I can see maybe the difference, oh, a first ballot Hall of Famer and then somebody who's just a Hall of Famer. I could see a little bit of a difference, like maybe somebody doesn't deserve it their first year, but from years 2 to 10, what is the difference that makes them go, oh, you're a Hall of Famer now? Like most of the guys don't even use all their votes. They let them go to waste. They use like 1, 2, maybe 3. Where I'm like, you could
Just
use
use
like
them all.
6 to 10.
Just use them all. Like it's
You
so
could use
stupid.
6 to 10, and you don't. And that's where I'm like, how is a guy who's already been retired out of the league for 5+ years? What does he got to do in years 2 to 10? Like, yeah, the draft class might be a little bit different, but that's where I'm like, you have plenty of votes. Like, there's not always going to be 10 Hall of Famers in each class, but I'm pretty damn sure there should be more than like 1 to 3 every year, because some of these classes, like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's absolutely stupid. And were as we've kind of discussed about steroids, it doesn't help you hit like Bonds wasn't hitting 500 plus home runs like Mark McGuire. Um, he just had the reason he was so good. He had the best eyes. Like he could pick up any pitch.
Yeah.
Like that's why he was so deadly. Like he had some of the best hand-eye coordination we've ever seen in Major League Baseball. That
Even like
was so
like
deadly.
the swing speed too. Like when he fixed Eric Gagne, he's throwing like 99 inside on him. When he hit that monster home run, like he pulled his arms in. Like steroids don't help you do stuff like that. They just help you get big. I mean, that's why his hat grew
Like
like the
if
greatest three
anything,
sizes
steroids
or
making you
whatever.
bigger are
Yeah, it
going to
just
make
makes
it
you bigger,
harder
so
to
it makes
get
it
in on that.
yeah. And it's like it's not gonna make everyone just better suddenly like that. Like there's a bunch of guys who took steroids who never got any better. And even was it
DeAndre
Ricky
Ayton.
Henderson who had like a vial of coke in his back pocket the entire time he was playing? Like that's why he was sliding head first. So I'm like, that's not cheating. Like taking coke in the dugout, like that's not cheating. Well, that's crazy to me. Like I don't get it. Also, if you look at Barry Bonds' stats from his last year, when he was what 41 or so, he batted like 275. He had like a 950 OPS. Like he should have gotten another contract, but
Phenomenal.
they just
He was
didn't
he
pay.
was gonna play for league minimum. Just teams
Yeah,
didn't
he was
want to
willing.
deal
Yeah,
with
he was
the drama.
the drama, and I felt like they just blackballed him at that point. And since then, he's just been like, not really involved in major league until the Marlins hired him. And if you're talking about Brett, like, what do you have to do? You have to do the whole, what's it called, dog and pony show or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
you have to go and you have to meet the writers. You have to do the talks and speeches and everything. Like, you have to campaign to get your, voted into the ballot, which is ridiculous. Like, everyone knows Barry Bonds should be in there. Everyone knows that, Roger Clemens should be in there. And if you're talking about, cheaters and stuff, at least in my opinion, once testing started in 2005 and then 2006, everybody caught after that shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Everyone before that, just let him in. So I mean, like A-Rod and guys like that, no, just because they got caught a couple of times. But all these guys were listed in the Mitchell report, which, if you guys don't know, the Mitchell report was the one that the report that Bud Selig had against steroid users in baseball. The way it worked was so stupid. Like the Players Association told the players, don't talk to them, don't talk to Mitchell about or anything. And what they did in the report was they would talk to a player and they would ask, "Do you want to talk about it?" And if they said no, they would just add their name to the list. So there's like 90 guys in that list.
I think
Large
Gonzo was on
majority of
there
them
too.
just didn't talk. That's it. All of them were like, "No, we're just not going to talk to you." And their names were added to the list anyway. So there's a bunch of guys who probably didn't do steroids, some who did, some who didn't, but everyone's names that are in there, like their legacy is tarnished forever because they're inside of there, even though all the reason why they were added is just because they didn't want to talk. It's stupid. I don't get it.
It's absolutely ridiculous. But let's transition to the guys that actually were voted in. First up, first ballot Hall of Famer with 366 votes at 95.1% of the ballots. Adrian Beltre played for a couple of teams, Dodgers, Mariners, was with Boston for a year, and then Texas. I personally think he's going to go in as a Texas Ranger. I think most people, when they think Adrian Beltre, they think Texas Rangers. Career stats, 3,100 hits, 477 home runs, with a slash of 286, 339, 480, with an OPS of 819. Phenomenal. Much deserved. He was an amazing player to watch. He had, let's see, 4-time All-Star, I think 4-time Gold Glove. He's got everything. He's got all the accolades. He's got the numbers. So not surprised whatsoever that he made it on the first ballot. And the funniest thing here, as our graphic shows, he does not like the top of his head touch. And for those of you that watched him growing up, you knew this because there were videos, there were teammates that would do it just to piss him off. And I still think it's super funny. So, Brett, your thoughts on Adrian Beltre making in on his first ballot?
I mean, super deserved. Like, I'm glad that the amount of people that did vote for him, like voted for him, like the 300, and I think he missed like maybe like 10, 15 votes, which again, what are you guys doing? How do you not vote for Adrian Beltre? What the hell? But I mean, a 93.5 WAR for his career, over 3,000 hits, just under 500 home runs, 286 batting average, 1,700 RBI, 121 stolen base. Like, dude just had a really solid career overall. Like, obviously, I agree with you. He's going to go in as a Ranger, but I mean, like, he had some insane years with the Dodgers. Like, I think 2004 MVP runner-up, hitting 48 home runs. Went to Seattle, had some good moments there. His 1 year with Boston still hit like 49 doubles. Like he was productive everywhere he went. Like he was always super fun to watch. Like he was just really good at like, especially at third base. Dude was like, I think that was a little more underrated part of his game, like defensively, like 5-time Gold Glover. But everyone, I personally always think about, the home runs and like the dropping to one knee and like, the hitting, but the dude really was a great fielder. So just all around, like 100% deserved of the Hall of Fame nod. And I'm glad that the voters got it right on this.
Yeah. Really, really good job. Gabe, your thoughts on Adrian Beltre?
Yeah, I think it's very, very well deserved. He had over 400 home runs, over 3,000 hits. Like, I honestly think he's probably one of the last few guys in the league who's going to reach that milestone. And he's incredibly deserving. I mean, he went to the World Series. Like, he's one of the all-time greats in the sport. I really liked watching him play when I was younger, and I love playing with him. And there'll be the show and all the other sports games. Like, he was just a freaking monster. So yeah, I'm happy he got in. Like you guys are saying 95%. Like, you couldn't be unanimous. Like, what the hell was like what was wrong with this game? I don't see anything wrong with this game. So screw the 15 writers who never turned in the ballot.
Well, it's probably the guys that decided to vote for the one dude that decided to vote for Brandon Phillips. So, and then I think we discussed before there were 15 writers that just didn't even turn in a ballot. And I personally feel if you don't turn in a ballot,
Lose your vote.
yeah, like you can't vote the next year. Like I was like that should be like the actual criteria of who gets to vote. I'm just not a fan of. But we could go on that rant for a very long time. So congratulations to Adrian Beltre. Up next is a hitting machine. I mean, did he play for it? I don't think he played for anyone else. Nope, he only played for the Colorado Rockies. Todd Helton was a dual sport athlete in college, by the way. Played baseball and football, was the starting QB for the Tennessee Volunteers. Started above Peyton Manning, by the way. And we all know how good Peyton Manning was. So Todd Helton, phenomenal. The dude had a stretch from 2000 to 2004 where you could not get the dude out. 2000, he finished in fifth in the MVP, 216 hits, 59 doubles, 42 homers, 147 runs driven in at a 372 batting average. Career numbers, like if you look at it, you're like, it's not really Hall of Fame worthy. Like 2,500 hits, 369 home runs, slash of 316, 414, 539 with an OPS of 953. But if you just look at his, like, if he was consistent his entire career, like once he started playing full time in 1998, the only year that he didn't hit more than 160 hits really was a injury season in 2008. But he was a 5-time All-Star, a 3-time Gold Glove. So he's got those accolades. Again, you don't need the guys that have like 8 to 10 All-Star. Like, it's not necessary. There's not a lot of guys that do that. So Todd Helton, that 2000 season is probably the best in Rockies history. So Brett, your thoughts on Todd Helton?
I mean, watch him growing up, and I think I saw most of him near like the end, like of his career, but still got to see a lot of his, like you said, end of the stretch from 2000 to 2004. He was just a machine. Like you said, the dude wasn't insanely good hitting. He like was able to control the zone really well. Great defensively at first base. Like also just a great guy. Like I know that shouldn't really matter with like Hall of Fame voting, but like it's just was always just like a good dude. Never kind of like Goldschmidt. There's never really anything like bad about him. He just like showed up, did his job, performed, went home. Yeah, that 2000 season, like I'd never really looked into it. That's insane. Hitting 372, like ridiculous. A 1100 OPS, like good for him. I still think it should have been a little bit sooner. But I do want to like a question that kind of made me think about is, do you think we need to start like lowering the threshold for like the Hall of Fame counting stats. It's always been like the 300 or 3,000 hits, 500 home runs. Like, again, I know that's, it could be, participation trophies and like, weak, but it's just the game the way it is nowadays. Like, there's hardly any guys that are even going to pass like those like 500, like get to those thresholds. And I mean, me personally, I think Todd Helton's alone. Like, this is a good, I think, threshold to like kind of like base off of like 2,500 hits and like 350 plus home runs while hitting 300. Like, those just to me feel like Hall of Fame numbers alone. Like, I know that like they're not as like flashy as like Beltray and all that, but the dude was a great player for like like a long time. And I just think that it's going to be hard to hold all these guys. Like a lot of guys aren't going to make the Hall of Fame if like those are the stats that need to be like
I want to
kept in.
see consistency. For me,
Oh
it's
yeah,
like I don't want to see a guy that had a really good full year stretch, and then the rest of his career he did absolutely nothing.
but that I
Like
think shows up usually in voting though. Like that's the thing is like there's guys like Brandon Phillips, great example. Like Jose Bautista, he had a much shorter stretch, but guys like that where they have like a couple insane years, but then like they're pretty average the other years. Like they don't get the votes. Like those guys are already off the ballot. We're like Todd Helton, like like you said, consistency showed stuff
99
like
to
this.
2007. Just look at his numbers for that 8-year stretch. He was probably one of the best first basemen. The only reason he didn't get higher up for MVP in that 2000 season, he played in a league with Barry Bonds.
Literally,
You
yeah.
just It's just like people now in the National League. You have to be unworldly now because Shohei is in the National League. If you want to win MVP, you're going to have to do something that we've never seen before. So I didn't reveal it, but he did get 307 votes at 79.7%. So just a little bit lower, but just not like just above the 75% threshold, but what you're talking about in terms of like the accolades, All-Star and Gold Glove, I feel if they're deserving and they've been consistent, they're gonna have those accolades. They just are. Because as we know right now, All-Star Game is a popularity contest. So as long as you do it consistently, the average fan's gonna know who you are and they're gonna vote you in. So
His
Gabe, your
numbers
thoughts?
jumped up from 52% last year in votes to 79% this year. So I guess the one more year of marinating, let people go, wow, yeah, he was a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and the thing is,
Yep.
like the issue that Helton ran into was just the fact that he played in cores. Everyone talks about the cores effect. You get your better numbers in cores, blah blah blah. But I remember hearing an interview with a former Rockies player. I can't remember who it was at this point, but it's when Arenado got traded to the Cardinals, and they asked him like, "Oh, you know, what are his numbers going to be like? Is it going to go down?" And he mentions like it's going to go down, but not because he's not playing at course, he's not hitting bombs. What he mentioned was the fact that when you go on a long road trip, because we have long road trips in this sport where you're gone for what,
2
week
weeks.
and a half, almost
Yeah.
2 weeks, you get used to seeing the ball a certain way. So if you spend the entire time, in the going around the NL Central, curveballs are going to curve. They're going to, dip down harder. Fastballs are going to move a certain way. Two seamers, they're all going to move a certain way. So then by the time you get back home, suddenly the curveballs aren't curving the same. The sliders aren't curving the same. So you're having to adjust on the spot over and over and over again the entire season. So if you spend a couple weeks at home, you adjust and you figure out, okay, so this is when the curveball curves, this is when this happens, this is when that happens. Then you leave and you're like, okay, now I have to readjust. I have to figure out how curveball moves. And it's one of those things where it's like everyone talks about the course effect. Sure, they might hit a few more home runs, but it's incredibly hard as a player. That's why pitchers don't go there. That's why a lot of hitters don't want to go there. It's because it makes your life so much harder to have to play in a place where you're not consistent playing there. So Arenado did have lower numbers his first year, but then he adjusted, and now he's always in the MVP discussion again. Because I mean, this is what happens. I mean, Todd Helton, he might have even batted better away from home, right?
Let me go to Fangraphs. I can find
Or is
that
it
out.
Larry Walker? Like you
So
have
the
certain
thing
guys.
is, the argument for Todd Helton at Coors Field, I don't see it. He's not a homers hitter. He was
Yeah.
a singles hitter. He was a singles. He never had his only big power year was 2000 and 2001, which was when he was in his prime. He was 26, 26. Those were his 26 and 27 seasons. So yeah, but he was always singles and walks. Like you look at his on base percentage, his career on base percentage was 414.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, he got on base. And as our lovely Josh is pointing out, he thinks I look like Todd Helton. And I appreciate the thought, Josh. I really do. So congratulations to Todd Helton. Man's 50 years old now. His last season was 2013. So he did have to wait a little bit to get in. So congratulations. We have one more member of the 2024 class. I believe this was his first ballot as well. Catcher Joe Mauer was on the cover of MLB The Show, I think, 2 or 3 times.
Back-to-back years.
Back-to-back years. Solid. Like he was more of a offensive catcher. Very big guy, 6'5". He was very large. 2,100 hits, 143 home runs, a 306 average. Again, nothing that jumps out at you. He just cleared the threshold at 293 votes at 76%. But again, like we said, he was consistent from 2005 to about 2010, and then 2012 to the end of his career. Like he was consistent. He does have a MVP, by the way.
That year was insane too.
Yeah, his MVP season, 2009, hit 365 with an on base of 444 and a slugging of 587. So about just over 1,000 OPS. Phenomenal year. He was a 3-time Gold Glove, a 5-time All-Star. Finished in the top 4 MVP. I mean, technically it's 5, but one he was 19th. But I'm like, that doesn't really count. So it's really 4 times he was kind of in the running for MVP. Solid career. Probably one of the best catchers of this era. He's not the best. I think that goes between Buster Posey and Yadi Molina. And the fact that Joe Mauer gets in on his first ballot, I almost feel 100% guaranteed that Posey and Molina will both make it on their first ballot. So congratulations to Joe Mauer. Brett, your thoughts on Joe Mauer entering the Hall of Fame?
Honestly, kind of like same thing you were saying. Like nothing that really like fully jumps off like the page for you, like at the numbers like hitting wise. Like wasn't really like, a home run guy. Still had over 2,000 hits, career 306 batting average. Dude was just really good. Like I remember when he won the batting title, I think he won the batting title 3 times. Yeah, 3-time batting,
Yes.
which is like from what I remember, like when he did it, that was rare for a catcher to like hit like that. Because even like kind of like now in the MLB and like from when I remember growing up, like it was rare to have like a catcher that's like a really good hitting catcher and that's like good at defense. Like it was hard to find like both. You basically had like Yadier Molina, where like Yadier Molina was still a great hitting catcher, but he wasn't a batting title like winning catcher. He wasn't like gonna have a 171 OPS plus and like slug over 1,000 type of catcher. So Joe Mauer, like he was different. Like we saw it obviously later in the career with like Buster Posey, but I think it's deserved. Like Joe Mauer was like a really, really good player, and like especially at a position that doesn't really get too much love for the Hall of Fame. I think he really stands out. Like it is especially funny, like going back to the whole voting, how Joe Mauer was a first ballot Hall of Famer, but Yogi Berra wasn't. But I mean, doesn't take away from like Joe Mauer. Like Joe Mauer, in my opinion, I think 100% deserved being a Hall of Famer. He had a great career.
Yeah. So, Gabe, your thoughts on Joe Mauer?
Yeah, I really like Joe Mauer. I just want to talk about the fact that how good he was at hitting despite being a catcher. Nowadays, if a catcher hits like 240, everyone's like, "Oh, he's a good hitter for a catcher." And this guy was hitting, 360, 370. Like this guy was incredible. And for people who don't know how hard catching is in general, like
His
they spend
lowest
most
was
of
261, and that was
that's
in
crazy.
2016.
That's crazy. And like the reason why it's so hard to find a good hitting catcher is just the fact that they spend so much time catching and working with pitchers. They don't have time to hit the way and every other position does. And the fact that you have even now, what if you say great hitting catcher right now? Who is it?
Adley
Briamuto,
Rufo
Realmuto.
Gabby, and Adley, right?
and
3,
Jonaheim.
Jonaheim. That's 4 out of 30. They're good at hitting, and even then, Briamuto had a down year. He batted what 260 or whatever it was. Like there's certain
260 a
guys
down
a
here.
Yeah,
down
that's
year.
wild.
That's what I'm
Any
saying.
other most teams would be like
I
ecstatic if
would have
they're
slutted myself out for Carson Kelly to hit 260 anytime here.
Yeah, and you're talking about like every other position. If you're talking about right fielders, there's a bunch of guys who hit around 300, hit 30 bomb. Every other position other than catcher, you have these crazy stats to go along with it because it's so much harder. And the fact that he was able to not just be a good defensive catcher, but he was able to be a good offensive catcher as well. Like that's incredibly rare. It's always been rare in baseball, and so that's why these guys are legends in the game, like Buster Posey, like Yogi Berra, and probably Adley in 10 years from now. He's gonna be probably in 10 years from now. Everyone's gonna talk about him being in the Hall of Fame too. Like I really like Joe Mauer. I'm happy he got in, especially on the first ballot.
Yeah, and if you look at the MVP voting for the year that he won, he ran away with it.
Yeah.
He got all but one first place vote and went to Miggy. But no, I mean he had a 7.8 WAR. Like that's a phenomenal season. So
And Mark Teixeira was in second that year.
yeah, and Mark Teixeira didn't get a first place vote. Miggy, who was
wild.
fourth, got a first
Mark
place
Teixeira
vote.
was what's average? So if it wasn't for Joe Mauer, no, I mean he still would have been like fifth or sixth in average, but like he was 2 out of the 3 for the Triple Crown category, and he didn't even get a single first vote. That's kind of wild.
Yeah, like it's just great. Like, yeah, Joe Mauer is a good catcher. Did I feel he was first ballot? Where if you would have asked me, like at the end, do you think Joe Mauer's the first ballot? Like, maybe, depending on who else is on the ballot that year.
I would have predicted he would have gotten like 55, 60. Like I would have genuinely been like Joe Mauer's like I think he's a Hall of Famer. Like I think the voters might miss him on the first one, but then fully put him in the second one. I think this just like you said earlier, this just solidifies that Buster Posey is going to be like Yadier Molina. They're going to be like minimum if they're not 90% minimum and like to 95. Like what the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah, I'm not a fan. So those were the 3 that are in for this year. So there's a couple that I want to talk about that I feel are deserving. And as Brett already pointed it out, Billy Wagner at 73.8% just misses the cut. He has 1 year left. So I hope he may need to do a little bit of a press tour this upcoming year. It's probably just because the writers don't remember. That's the problem that I
That's
have
so
with the
dumb,
5-year.
Yeah.
But I understand why they do it. They don't want to come off as recency bias. So they want to, but some of the writers, they don't look like they don't do the research as to who's on the ballot. They just like, they probably just go like, do I remember this dude? And if they're not a active writer, like I don't know who that guy was. So that's just Billy Wagner, I personally feel is deserving. Like a left-handed closer that threw heat, like it's just straight heat. Most lefties were crafty lefties. They were getting you off with breaking balls and off speed. No, Billy Wagner would come after you. He spent a lot of his career with Houston, but did play, I believe, for the Mets for a bit.
He had
So
422 saves.
Yeah,
and a
like
2.31 ERA. Like
how he
I'm sorry,
didn't get
that
in
dude
his
is
first couple years, I don't understand.
ridiculous.
It's just how the voting works. It's just
Was
it's a
was it
joke.
because if this is his 10th year, Mo got inducted, what, 3 years ago in 2020? Did they not wanna let him become a Hall of Famer before Mariano Rivera? Because they were like, "Oh, like, he's a Hall of Famer, but, Mo deserves it first." Like,
And
is that it?
the 3 years in between. Like, I don't understand it. We got a couple of cheaters on the list that we got Carlos Beltran. I swear, if that man makes it in, I'm
Yeah.
gonna no.
Confirmed
He
cheater, like,
literally was the
legitimately he was the main guy in the Astros that was like it's not like
he
an
yeah,
Altuve situation where he didn't use it, like, he used it once or twice, and then, like, it was always when they didn't realize he was up. Like, he used it a lot that 2017
Yeah.
year, and that's the reason why the Mets didn't hire him to be their manager, but
and no one has
he's gonna get in.
sense. Like, no one has hired him as a
Yeah,
manager because they don't want that. And then we got
He got
Alex
50% of the vote,
Rodriguez on
right?
here.
50% in his second year, 57% actually.
Yeah, he was at 57%. I'm only bringing this guy up because of what Brett told us before the show. Gary Sheffield got 63.9% of the vote. Brett, tell us about your experience with his son when you played him on MLB The Show online.
His son's a character on Twitter, as if you guys have Twitter, and especially sometimes in the MLB like community when he was playing a bunch, he would definitely be like, if you guys know what it means, bunt dancing, kind of like would like shit talk a little bit too, after like games he barely won, and some of my homies played him, so I randomly matched up with him in a game. Ended up like I think beating him like 11-2, made him quit before the game even finished. Didn't even want to finish out the game. So honestly, kind of soft. I'm sad that Gary Sheffield gave his son his name, and I apologize for him. But yeah, Gary Sheffield's definitely gonna miss out on the ballot, I believe.
So I'm
Yeah,
going to
also
list
Gary
off.
Sheffield used steroids, by the way.
Yeah.
Admitted steroid user.
Sorry. Yeah, I loved his batting stance when I was younger. I would mimic it all the time. That man's bat speed was the fastest I have ever seen. The fact that he could do his wagging thing and then get his hand set and he could just rip, like how quick
I
his
could
bat
only do that
speed
with a
was.
wiffle ball bat. That's the only thing I could do
Yeah.
it with. I don't know how they do that with a real like wooden baseball bat. It's crazy.
Yeah, like I don't know if Gary Sheffield's going to get in. Like he had a good career. I don't know if it's Hall of Fame. Like I'd have to go back and actually look at it and probably go back and just watch him play to feel like is he worthy? So under Gary Sheffield, we have Andrew Jones. I'm biased because we got his son on our team. We got Drew Jones. I think defensively, Andrew Jones should be in. Literally one of the best center fielders of the 90s. Like there was no ball that he wouldn't get.
Dude,
But also
No.
he had like 400 home runs, right? Like in his
yeah,
first 10
look at
years
his
in the league.
stats.
The last 10 years
434.
were like I think what affected him. And I feel he kind of had like that Griffey thing where his peak was so freaking high that he was already like a first ballot Hall of Famer. But he had the second half of his career, which wasn't all that good. And I think that really affected him. But I'm like, he should be in there. He has what, like a 90 WAR, right? Or
He
something
has a
like that. Like
62.7 WAR.
62 WAR. Yeah, I'm like,
The only issue I have, and I think they might keep him out, he only hit 254 in his career. So he wasn't
Yeah.
um
That's what I think,
he
like
had
Gabe's saying, like, his last 5 years.
434 home runs. Like
Yeah,
that's what's
dude,
crazy. He hit 254 but had
and 10 Gold Gloves.
434. Yeah, dude, Gold Glove. Like I think the amount of Gold Gloves he has kind of outweighs how poor his batting average was. Like his 2005 season is phenomenal.
Yeah.
160 games, 51 home runs. He won a Gold Glove. He finished second in the MVP behind Albert Pujols, only because Albert had a 8.4 WAR that year.
Lord.
So yeah, that's
Yeah, so
tough
he
to
has a
get
good shot,
by.
though. This is his 7th year on the ballot, so he has 3 more, and he's at 61%. So he just needs to make up 14.4% in 3 years.
Yeah. We talked about Beltran. We talked about Rodriguez. We got Manny Ramirez, Chase Utley, Omar Vizquel, Bobby Abreu, Jimmy Rollins, Andy Pettit, Mark Burley. But all these guys around like 30% or lower. I don't. First of all, I think Chase Utley is a dirty ass player.
Yeah.
Fuck Chase Utley.
Was he the one that ended
um,
Pedroia's career, right?
No, it
that
wasn't
him?
Pedroia. It was the dude from the Mets,
yeah.
Castillo.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's the reason that they had to basically add the rule where you had to slide into the base.
He's not the full reason. Like, well, like like I will call Utley a dirty
Uh,
player, but like we'll be honest, there were some pretty insane rules for years in the MLB, or like some slides in the MLB. Like I
I
remember back
think
in the
his
80s and 90s.
slide on that Mets player is what caused the rule to find. Like they're like, all right, that's it. Like that. Like he wasn't the only one that did it, but it was that slide was brutal. Like if you go
Ruben
back
Tejada.
and yeah, Ruben Tejada, like that slide was ugly. It was bad.
like made him like somersaults in midair and everything. Like it's
Yeah.
so freaking.
He
gross.
literally like slid basically like a foot from the bag. Like his knee was. It's like he was basically trying to have his knee just like dive down into the bag. Which I'm like, hey, I'm not the best base runner. I don't think that's how you slide into bags.
Yeah. So yeah, I've never and then he went on the Dodgers. And I'm like, oh, now I really freaking hate you.
Here's someone I wanted to bring up because they got 7.8%. K-Rod. Francisco Rodriguez. So just take a quick look at. I know he had more of a peak than like I think Wagner should be in way before him. But I mean, again, Wagner had a no wars, not everything. Wagner had a 227 point something war. K-Rod had a 24.2, 2.86 ERA and a 437 saves. I think he's definitely at least gonna he has a shot in 10 years, I think, which sucks because like
he
it
had
might take all 10.
62 saves in 2008.
Yeah, dude.
That's
But that's what I'm saying.
insane.
Like he had an insane peak. He had 45 in 05, 47 in 06, 40 in 07, 62 in 08, 35, 25, 23, 23. And then 2014, 44, 2015, 38, 2016, 44.
Yeah.
Like he
What
went
happened
through a
between
huge. I think he went to because he went to the the Mets. He went to the Brewers, and then he went to I think it was
Baltimore,
we
and then
went
he
back to the
went back
Brewers,
to
and then he fixed
Milwaukee?
himself.
Yeah, like
Yeah, so
he
that's what
had
I'm saying.
just
Like
like
I
this
think he has
a huge gap where he literally was non-existent.
Yeah, that's what I think is probably gonna hurt him. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think he deserves to be a Hall of Famer just off of like, reliever. Like if relievers are making it like relievers that definitely deserve it. Like I think K-Rod is definitely one of the guys that deserved it, just because like the stuff he did for that stretch, like is ridiculous. 60 like again 62 saves in 1 year is absolutely insane.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
mean
you're talking
it's
about earlier, Brett, but just the fact that like we might have to adjust some of these accounting stats for the Hall of Fame. Like, how many people are actually going to reach 3,000 hits? How many guys are going to hit 500 home runs? How many guys are going to reach 3,000 strikeouts, 300 wins? Like all these stats that were like, oh yeah, Hall of Famer, Hall of Famer. But it's a totally different game now. Like as I mentioned in my rants, like all these guys were on amphetamines. Like you know why? Everyone's grandpa complains, oh, nobody goes deep into games anymore. Nobody plays every day anymore. I'm like, yeah, because nobody's high and using steroids. Like they're tired. Like let them rest. Like give Cattell a day off. Like that's how you preserve these guys. You can't really just throw them out every single day the way they used to before. So they're just not going to be that same amount of of the stats. Like when was the last time we saw 300 strikeouts?
yeah,
I
we are
been a minute.
It's been a
I don't
long,
think
long
we're gonna
I don't
see
think anybody's gonna
3,000
touch it.
hits.
Maybe Garrett Cole if he continues and has another like 5-6 years at the rate, but that's like the only guy I can think of in the modern game that might get there.
So I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot of guys like Goldie. He's at right around 2,500 hits, right? Maybe
Goldie should be in the Hall of
2,500 or
Fame just
1,900.
off of his stats right now.
Yeah, so
Like
like there's a
if
lot of guys that were like are on that border right now, and like if they don't hit those accounting stats, and people are gonna be like, no, he doesn't deserve because he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that. But I'm like, it's a totally different game. It's not the same
Goldie
anymore.
has 1,900 hits.
1900. Okay.
So, in terms of active players, the only one that could do it, and he just has to do it consistently, and he's got to play till he's at least 40. Freddie Freeman's at 2114. And
Hits?
he's at 33. Yeah. So that's his hits. And he's 33 years old. Like everyone else that is top on that list, maybe Altuve, he's at 2047. And he is 33 years old. But everyone else on that list, you got Joey Votto, who's the current active leader at 2135. He's 39. Then you got Elvis Andrus, Nelson Cruz, McCutcheon, and Longo. Everyone else that's near the top of that list hasn't hit 2,000 hits. So
yeah, like it's going to be really hard to even get there anymore.
It's just due to lack of plate appearances, lack of at bats, because we're not going to see a lot of guys play 160 games. We just aren't, because it's been proven that most of them get worn out, and if they make it to the postseason, they don't do anything in the postseason. So why?
Yeah.
So, and they're like, just give them a day off, have them play 140, have them play 130. So yeah. Anything else you guys want to talk about here with the Hall of Fame before we go today?
I don't think so. No.
No, I just want to say that I don't think writers should be voting on the Hall of Fame. Like, why? Like they could have a vendetta or a grudge against the guy, and it's so stupid that we let them vote. And but I don't even know what
it shouldn't be fans though.
Yeah,
I think
there's no easy fix.
Even the players, the Players Association, they voted in what's his face? Harold Baines. He had like a 30 WAR. He was not that good, but he was a great clubhouse guy. Everyone loved him, and I think that would be the issues with players voting, because if you hear any baseball podcasts with players, they always hype these guys up. Then you go look him up. He's like, oh, he batted 250.
He almost had 3,000 hits though.
Yeah, but he batted like 250, right? Or 240, like
289, 384 homers, 1,600 RBI.
Yeah, I mean, he has pretty good accounting stats, but I don't know. Like, there's certain guys that should and shouldn't be in there, and because the players, when they fall in love with the guy, he has a good reputation around the sport, so they want to like hype him up. But
maybe Longoria will get in.
I think Longo should get in.
Well, he has to retire first, and then his clock should start.
He has the stats.
Yeah, so
put Alec in the Hall of Fame. I agree with Josh. Alec Hall of Fame already. Do it.
Alex Thomas right now. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to our Hall of Fame discussion. I hope everyone enjoyed Gabe's rant. I absolutely thought it was amazing. What he said was the truth. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future content. We got a lot of good stuff coming up for you guys. Like and comment as well. Our socials are in the description box below. We will see y'all next time.